everyone, what's up and welcome. Is Overwatch too casual? Does it have a future as an esport? This is something that's been discussed for weeks and months ever since this game came out, and even before that. Does this game have a shot with the big boys like Counter-Strike and League of Legends and Dota? And even if it does have the potential, even if it is a competitive game, is the player base competitive enough to want to watch that sort of stuff? You see a lot of things about, oh, the player base is too casual, just look at our Overwatch and how it's all just play the games and fan art and all that. Meanwhile, if you go to the Dota or Counter-Strike or League subreddits, you see all sorts of different discussion about the more competitive aspects of the game, like tournaments and balance. So it looks like we're dealing with two different things. Is the game competitive enough, and is the player base competitive enough? Let's start by looking at the first points. Now, I'm just going to quickly get out of the way that you don't need to be a competitive game to be a strong spectator game. Just look at Hearthstone, for example. I love that game, but it's not the most competitive thing in the entire world. You don't watch it to see, oh, what are the players going to do? Because let's be honest, most of the time you can see exactly the move that the players are going to make before they make it, just because of how the game works. You watch it more for the suspense built into the game. What is he going to top deck? How is the RNG going to roll on this card or that card? In the case of Overwatch, however, there is no built-in suspense mechanics into the game. There's no RNG, nothing like that. So it actually is very important for it to be a competitive game, for it to also be a strong spectator game. But what is a competitive game? What's the difference between a competitive game and a quote-unquote casual game? What's the difference? Well, a competitive game needs to reward skill above everything else. The better team should always, or pretty much always, win. Now, I'll go back to the Hearthstone example. The reason why Hearthstone is not the most competitive game in the world is because if you look at the tournaments in Hearthstone, you always have random players just kind of winning a big tournament one day and then dropping off the map, never winning anything again. There isn't that consistency. You don't have the same players winning, taking first or second over and over and over again, because that's just how card games work. Same thing with Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh!, anything like that. Any game that has too much randomness or not enough depth to decision making isn't a competitive game. Take tic-tac-toe as the most obvious example. Play tic-tac-toe for 10 minutes and you are basically indistinguishable from the most prestigious tic-tac-toe grandmaster in the world at that point. The key here is consistency. A better team should usually or always beat a worse team. So you should see the same teams winning in tournaments consistently up until at least other teams have a chance to improve and surpass them. If one week team A, B, and C takes first, second, and third, and then the next week those teams don't even place and it's three completely different teams, that means that the game is not very competitive because teams can randomly go from being the best team in the world to the worst team in the world, from week to week to week, which means it's not their skill that's a factor, it's randomness or the weather or something like that. Now, these games were just played yesterday, so I don't want to super spoil it, but Envious is a team that's been doing very, very well. We're practically undefeated for a pretty long time in Overwatch. Yeah, they've started to lose a couple of games, drop a few matches here or there. They didn't win at their last LAN before E-League, but they're doing really well again at E-League. And it just goes to show that you have multiple full-time professional hardcore teams putting in 10, 12 hours a day into this game, trying to perfect it, and you still can have a team like Envious that is just so dominant. It shows that skill is truly differentiated in this game very, very strongly. Winning correlates to skill almost 1-to-1, or pretty close. So I think there's no question that Overwatch is a sufficiently deep and competitive game just because of the results we're seeing from these professional, like I said, full-time teams. But now we come to the second and more important point, which is the player base. Does the player base want to watch Overwatch, or are they not competitive enough? Are they too casual or whatever, whatever you want to call them? Now, this fear is based partially on people are just too meta about esports right now. People are so excited and so enthusiastic about esports becoming big that they're not actually enjoying it anymore. So you go on Twitch, and instead of watching something and being like, yeah, I enjoy it, or I don't enjoy it, you look at the number of viewers to make Twitch tell you if you're enjoying it or you're not enjoying it. If it doesn't have enough viewers, then clearly it's not enjoyable. But Overwatch does have a pretty healthy amount of viewers. Obviously, E-League is getting about 40,000, which is not a ridiculously insane number compared to esports events in the past, but it's quite healthy. And almost amazing, really, considering just how young the game is. And it's not just hype novelty views either. The game isn't quite young enough to be novel, like, the games that are out for 1 or 2 weeks to get a ton of views, but then just drop off immediately. Overwatch has been out for several months now. It's way past the honeymoon stage, but it's still in the infancy stage. So think about who watches video games. Why does League of Legends have so many viewers? Counter-Strike, Dota, how do they get so many consistent viewers where even Minecraft, right? Minecraft gets a ton of viewers. It's because you have to think of the people who watch these games. So right now, Overwatch is huge. Overwatch is almost as big as League of Legends. It's equal to League of Legends in PC bang in Korea. China, not so open as far as statistics go, but I associate with tons of Chinese individuals on a regular basis just because of my job and stuff. And they're not even gamers. And Overwatch is a huge household name there. I'm sure all of you can personally use your own experience to judge how big it is in the West. It's quite big, but its numbers on Twitch don't show that. It's because it's still at the stage where people want to play. If you are into Overwatch, instead of watching Overwatch, you play Overwatch because everyone who got into the game is still in the period of their life where they're playing video games. For things like League, Dota, Counter-Strike, these older games, the people watching them are the people who were playing these games 5 or 6 years ago. And over time, over the years, they eventually didn't have as much time for video games, just didn't feel like necessarily sitting down and playing them for long sessions anymore. So this is an audience that you've built up over years and years and years who used to play the game, but have sort of calmed down. And now instead of playing the game, they'll just chill out, watch it for a little while. And that viewership is still growing. It's not a game like H1Z1 where it's basically all novelty, right? You don't really play H1Z1. You watch other people play H1Z1 where it's an entertainment thing. It's very much a hands-on game. And I think that's great that if you're into Overwatch at this particular period, because it's only been out for 4 months or so, you want to play Overwatch. You don't want to go to Twitch and watch it. At least as far as the private individual streamers go, not necessarily the huge tournaments. But that's a result of the game's youth as well. Now, here's a graph. It's not a super scientific exact graph, but this is basically how you learn and how you acquire knowledge when you first pick up a game like Overwatch. In the beginning, you're constantly finding new things, picking up new knowledge, thinking of new ways to look at the game, but as you learn more and more and more, it slowly starts to get, slower. Now, the pros have blasted way up this graph, up to the part where it starts to flatten out, where most of the player base is still somewhere along that beginning part. Because of this, the player base hasn't actually played the game enough to appreciate all these fine arts for you having your wine, sipping your wine glass, the fine aspects of Overwatch. That's why if you look at the Overwatch subreddit, you see that the community is still really enthusiastic about the same old boring play of the game that you've probably seen 50 times in some form or another, because it's still new, it's still a novel thing, and it's still interesting as new players join, players who maybe didn't play so much in Season 1 are starting to play again. It's still only a few months after the game was released. The community needs time to move out of the, wow, look at the Roadhog hook a guy into the well for the 50th time stage, and into the, hey, let's start discussing, let's go into the game some more, because now they're starting to appreciate the game more and more as it matures, and you're even starting to see that very, very slowly, but it's happening. It's not like Counter-Strike or Dota or League of Legends, where they've seen 6, depending on which game it is, 6, 7, 8, 9 plus years of this game. Of course, the community is going to be way more sophisticated and care about way deeper stuff than the Overwatch community that's only been playing the game for a few months. So stop worrying. Overwatch is a great game. If you're watching this, chances are you know it's a great game and you think that too. It has great people backing it, great companies backing it, investors, and it has a great future ahead. I think that it can become big. I think that the only thing that can ruin this game and kill this game is if people are if people rush it, if people try to force it along faster than it should be because they're impatient, they see these other games, and they want Overwatch to be the same as this 10-year-old esport on, 6 months in to its release. It's not going to happen, so just chill out. Enjoy it while it lasts, because I'm sure that in the future, 3-4 years from now, everyone's going to be looking back to now as the good old days, as they always do. So that's our little chat. I know it's a little different from the content I normally put out, but sometimes it's cool just to talk about random stuff. So I hope you enjoyed it. And if you didn't, I hope you tell me why I'm stupid and wrong in the comments. So good luck in solo queue and have a great day. Peace out, guys.